You are not here to coast. You are not here to drift through life on autopilot, numbed by convenience, paralyzed by fear, sedated by comfort. You're here to win, but that doesn't mean trophies. It doesn't mean applause or admiration. To win is to carry the weight of your potential and walk anyway. To win is to look directly into the abyss and keep moving. To win is to fight the internal war not once, not twice, but every single day. The mindset of a winner is not built in glory, it is forged in failure, again and again and again, until you stop being afraid of it, until the failure informs you instead of defeating you. Do you want to know the truth? The winner is the one who has suffered more voluntarily, who walks into discipline, into pain, into challenge, not because it feels good, but because it's necessary. People will tell you to think positively. But real winning isn't about positive thinking. It's about accurate thinking. You don't ignore the darkness, you map it. You don't deny your weakness, you confront it. You don't sugarcoat the truth, you study it like your life depends on it. Because it does. Discipline, order, purpose, these aren't just habits, they are weapons. Weapons against chaos, internal and external. You must become a person who is dangerous not to harm, but to withstand. To stand in the fire and not melt. To carry responsibility when no one else will. To build structure when everything around you is crumbling. A winner is not the loudest in the room. He's the one who shows up when no one else does. He's the one who chooses truth over comfort, work over distraction, character over convenience. You must earn your self-respect. Not from what you say you'll do, but from what you do when no one is watching. The mindset of a winner is built in the silence, when the world isn't clapping. When your back hurts, your eyes burn, your soul is tired, and you keep going. This isn't about being better than others. It's about being better than the version of you that quit yesterday. You don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be relentless. You need to chase clarity like your future depends on it, because it does. You need to pick up the heaviest load you can bear and carry it voluntarily. Only then will you realize the burden was never the enemy, avoidance was. So rise not once, but every time you fall, every time you fail. Every time the world tells you no, you say, watch me, because that's the mindset of a winner. The world does not need more passive spectators. It needs warriors. It needs men and women who will stand up, straighten their backs, and fight not against others, but against who they were yesterday. You are not finished. Your story is still being written by every action you take, and every action you refuse to take. And it's not over until you win. You must understand something fundamental. Life is suffering, and if you don't take that seriously, if you don't prepare yourself voluntarily to face the inevitable burdens of existence, then you are destined to be crushed by them. You are not safe by avoiding pain, you're just unprepared when it arrives. A winner, someone truly capable of enduring and rising above, is not formed by comfort. They do not wait for the world to demand effort. Instead, they choose to suffer, not in a masochistic way, not in self-pity, but in the structured, deliberate embrace of meaningful struggle. That's a very different thing. Voluntary struggle sharpens you. It defines you. It calls forth capacities in you that remain dormant when you live under the illusion that ease is the goal. You might think that a good life is one where everything is smooth, where the path is clear, where no one challenges you, where no one expects more than you're comfortable giving, but that life produces nothing but weakness. You'll decay in that life, slowly, quietly, and one day you'll wake up and realize that you've been hiding from the very experiences that could have transformed you into something capable of meaningfully existing. A winner wakes up and understands that suffering isn't optional, it's the cost of living. The difference is they pay it forward. They don't wait to be broken. They build themselves. They train when no one's watching. They endure what most people avoid. They put their body, their mind, and their spirit into a furnace of repetition, effort, and discipline because they know what's at stake. You don't want a life without burden. You want to be strong enough to carry the heaviest burden you can shoulder. That's where meaning lies. That's where you start to glimpse your potential, not just as someone who survives, but as someone who prevails. And that can only happen when you say, I will carry this, I will face this, I choose to step into the chaos, fully aware of the cost. That choice, The voluntary confrontation with adversity is the very foundation of the winner's mindset. It's not a mindset built on entitlement or external validation. It's a mindset carved out of pain, chosen freely, for the sake of becoming who you could be if only you stopped running. Failure is inevitable. Anyone who tells you otherwise is either lying or hasn't done anything difficult enough to experience it. But here's the distinction that separates those who grow from those who collapse. The winner doesn't interpret failure as a death sentence. He sees it as feedback, and that's crucial. You have to understand, failure is information. It's a signal, not a condemnation. It tells you where you're weak, where you're insufficiently prepared, where your map of the world doesn't match the territory. And that's not something to ignore, that's a gift if you have the strength to face it honestly. But most people don't want to hear that. They want to succeed immediately, to be praised, to avoid the sting of inadequacy. And so they hide, they rationalize, they blame the system, their past, their environment, anything to avoid the brutal mirror that failure holds up. But the person who's aiming upward voluntarily invites that mirror. He looks at his own limitations not as excuses, but as problems to solve. He doesn't crumble when he loses. He studies the loss. He interrogates it. He dissects it with precision. What did I miss? Where was I blind? What do I need to change? That's the mindset of a winner. Because the goal is not to avoid falling. The goal is to rise every time you do, and to do so better. There's a kind of humility embedded in this process, a psychological posture that says, I'm not who I could be yet, but I'm willing to learn. And learning, real learning, only happens when you're confronted by the cost of not knowing, by the consequence of miscalculation. Failure is honest. It exposes you, and that exposure, while painful, is also the path forward, if you're willing to endure it. You want to be someone who fails intelligently, who treats every misstep as a lesson, not a final judgment. That takes courage. It takes a willingness to be wrong. But if you can manage that, if you can suffer the sting without turning bitter or resentful, then you grow. You adapt, you evolve, and eventually, you become someone who can win precisely because you've failed enough to understand how. It's not perfection that creates a winner. It's the capacity to rebuild, stronger each time, through failure itself. There's a popular notion floating around that if you just think positively enough, everything will work out. That somehow, if you speak enough affirmations into the void, the universe will bend to your will. But that's a delusion, a comforting one, yes, but a dangerous one, because reality doesn't care about your positive thinking. It demands competence, it demands truth, and the truth is often brutal. A winner doesn't hide behind shallow optimism. He engages in accurate thinking. He doesn't deny the existence of chaos, failure, betrayal, suffering. He maps them. He studies them. Because he knows that if you pretend everything is fine when it isn't, the problem doesn't go away. It grows in the dark where you're too afraid to look. Accurate thinking is courageous. It forces you to confront exactly where you are in relation to where you could be. It means staring at your shortcomings and refusing to flinch. It means asking, what am I avoiding? What lies am I telling myself to stay comfortable? What do I not want to admit, even though it's obvious? Winners think like strategists. They don't fantasize. They analyze. If they're weak, they identify the weakness. If they're behind, they adjust the plan. If they're wrong, they own it, because the alternative, remaining blind, arrogant, or deluded, is far more costly. This doesn't mean you become cynical. It doesn't mean you walk around assuming the worst of everything, but it does mean you ground yourself. You root your thinking in reality, no matter how painful or complex that reality is. That's what separates wisdom from naivete. It's what makes your goals achievable rather than imaginary. Accurate thinking doesn't promise comfort. It promises clarity, and clarity gives you the tools to act effectively. Because when you see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be, you begin to realize what kind of person you need to become in order to overcome it. And that's the point. You don't get stronger by lying to yourself. You get stronger by standing in front of the truth and saying, I see it. I accept it. Now, what must I do? That is the beginning of transformation. That is the path of the winner, not the fantasist, not the wishful dreamer, but the one who thinks clearly, acts courageously, and builds relentlessly. Self-respect is not something you're entitled to. It's not a birthright, and it's not something you acquire just by existing. It's earned, and it's earned in the most private, difficult, and invisible moments of your life, not when the lights are on. Not when people are applauding, but when no one sees. When it's just you, your conscience, and the decision you know you're supposed to make. There's a profound danger in outsourcing your value to the opinions of others. Because those opinions are fickle, one day they lift you up, the next they tear you down. If your self-worth is built on applause, then it's fragile, at the mercy of public opinion, trending moods, and shallow praise. But the person who respects themselves truly has built that respect through discipline, through sacrifice, through doing what is right, not what is convenient. When you say you'll do something, and you do it, especially when it's difficult, you send a powerful message to yourself that you can be trusted, that your word means something, that you're not just noise and potential, you're action and integrity. And every time you follow through, that belief in yourself becomes stronger. That's the foundation of self-respect, and it's internal, it's not for show. People confuse self-esteem with self-respect. Self-esteem can be inflated by flattery, by shallow success, by temporary validation, but self-respect is forged in discipline. It's forged in those quiet, relentless decisions to rise early when it would be easier to sleep, to study when distraction is clawing at your mind, to train when your body is sore, to speak the truth when your voice shakes. That is where real confidence comes from, earned confidence, not the artificial kind built on hollow affirmations. And here's the truth. You know when you're lying to yourself. You know when you cut corners, when you retreat from responsibility, when you justify weakness instead of confronting it. And over time, those choices erode your self-respect. Not because anyone else sees it, but because you do. So you must decide, will you become the kind of person you would admire, not for what they have, but for what they are? Because if you want to walk through the world with your head high, not out of arrogance but out of earned strength, then you have to build that man or woman, one painful, disciplined choice at a time. Discipline, order, purpose, these aren't abstract concepts. They're the very structure that keeps your life from descending into chaos. And make no mistake, chaos is always waiting. It lurks just beyond the borders of your routine, your commitments, your focus. The second you let your guard down, the second you stop showing up with intention, it begins to consume you. Discipline is not punishment, it's alignment. It's the decision to act in accordance with your highest values, even when you don't feel like it. It's what separates a competent person from a fragile one, because life doesn't ask for your preferences. It demands your readiness, and the only way to be ready is to build the kind of internal structure that can carry weight. Heavy weight, weight that breaks undisciplined people in half. Order is not control for its own sake. It's the daily decision to create stability in your habits, in your environment, in your relationships. If you cannot bring order to your own life, how can you possibly aim to influence the world beyond you? You start by cleaning your room, not because it's trivial, but because it's symbolic. If you can't master the small disciplines, you won't handle the larger ones. You'll collapse under the pressure, and purpose. Purpose is the axis around which all discipline revolves. Without purpose, discipline is slavery. It becomes drudgery. But when you know why you're enduring the repetition, the difficulty, the long hours, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes sacred. You're no longer just surviving. You're building something. You're organizing the chaos of existence into a meaningful structure. Together, discipline, order, and purpose form a kind of internal armor. They don't shield you from suffering. They prepare you to face it. Life is unpredictable. Tragedy, loss, betrayal. They will come. And when they do, the people who have built nothing inside themselves will be shattered. But those who have laid the bricks of responsibility, intention, and integrity, day by day, they will stand, maybe not untouched, but unbroken. You don't rise to your potential by accident. You rise because you constructed yourself. Like a fortress, brick by brick, and when the storm comes, and it always comes, your discipline, your order, and your purpose are what hold you together. That's not just success, that's survival, and it's the only kind that lasts. The real competition in life is not against the world. It's not against your peers, your critics, or the people who seem to be ahead of you. The real competition is against who you were yesterday. And if you fail to grasp that, you'll spend your life chasing shadows, measuring yourself against illusions, constantly shifting the goalposts based on someone else's path. That's not growth, that's distraction. Every day, you are presented with a choice: continue being the version of yourself that you already are, or move incrementally toward the version of yourself you could become. And that potential version is always watching. It's not imaginary. It's built from the difference between what you're doing and what you know you could be doing. It is psychologically devastating to live beneath your potential. You know when you're doing it. You feel the weight of it, not as anxiety exactly, but as a quiet, gnawing sense of betrayal. You're not lying to others. You're lying to yourself. And every time you avoid that workout, procrastinate on that task, ignore that hard conversation, you widen the gap between who you are and who you could be. That's not harmless. That's corruption, personal corruption. The man or woman who aims upward understands this. They don't need to be perfect. They don't demand greatness overnight. What they demand is progress, deliberate, measurable, and disciplined, not leaps, but steps. Not fantasies, but actions. They journal, they reflect, they recalibrate, because the goal is not to beat others. It's to stop being a slave to the old self, to the weaker self, to the fearful, resentful, lazy, distracted self. Every small victory matters, every early morning, every hour of focused work, every hard truth told. These are not minor wins, they are bricks, bricks in the construction of a self you respect, and respect is the foundation of strength. So the question isn't, how do I compare to others? The question is, am I better than the man I was yesterday? And if the answer is yes, even slightly, then you're winning. That's the only scoreboard that matters. And the truth is, if you keep that aim in mind consistently, relentlessly, over weeks, months, years, you won't just become someone better, you'll become someone formidable.